Thank you, everyone. So, first of all, good morning. It is such an honor to get to speak with you today. When I sought guidance regarding the content of my address, I was given the opportunity to speak on an array of topics, including my path to the judiciary and showing love through mentorship. Because both topics are so intertwined, I will weave them throughout my story. As you heard the Reverend state, I grew up in the small town of Dos Palos, the daughter of Mexican immigrant farm workers. My 3 older brothers and I spent many of our childhood summers toiling alongside our parents in the fields of California's Central Valley. I fondly remember those summer mornings, waking to the smell of my mother's handmade tortillas warming on the comal, and of being up so early that there was still a bit of a chill to the otherwise suffocating Central Valley heat. Trying to support a family of 6 while working under these conditions did not lend itself to living the American dream. The 6 of us lived in a 500 square foot, 2-bedroom home that lacked insulation, centralized heating and air conditioning, and whose plumbing was questionable at best. As the youngest sibling and only girl, I slept in a sleeping bag on the living room floor until the age of 15. This arrangement drove us to work harder and save more, so that by the time I was in the 9th grade, we had saved enough money to buy a small plot of land, and the 6 of us spent 9 months working with a contractor to build our own home. Despite this less than ideal situation, our mother worked hard to ensure that she raised her children to be responsible, well-educated adults. My mother grew up the second eldest of 18 to poor, uneducated parents in Mexico, only received a 2nd grade education there herself, and worked low-wage jobs throughout our childhood so that we could eat. She taught her children to treat everyone with respect, work hard, not complain, learn from all experiences, and be grateful for all opportunities. She expected a lot from the 4 of us, and thanks to my oldest brother Fernando's guidance, we were all able to exceed her expectations. We are the product of a proud mother who did not allow us to throw ourselves pity parties. She was famous for asking, "Esto es para llorar? Is this worth crying over?" And spoiler alert, nothing ever was. Because she reminded us that we were lucky to be in a country that gave us a free education and an opportunity to make something of ourselves. She was a resilient mother who went against her husband's machismo and allowed each of her children to move away to attend college when the norm would have been to keep us at home so that we could work and financially contribute to the family. A formidable woman who again went against her husband by earning her own junior college degree with highest honors, while in her 50s and after her children attended college, when she was too injured to continue working in the fields. A resourceful mother who helped her children in any way she could. And I have a very moving example of this. When I was a senior in high school, I applied to Harvard University. It was a long shot, but Harvard had always been my dream. Hugo Morales, a Harvard alum, called me on behalf of the university and wanted to schedule an interview. After talking it over with my brother Fernando, we decided that it would be best that I wear a suit. Unfortunately, upon realizing the cost of said suits, I became demoralized. We simply could not afford it. Undeterred, my mother bought me a suit at the Remate, which is the flea market, in Merced, and tailored it to look like it had come from the department store. Although Harvard did not admit me, I've never forgotten my mother's loving gesture. As I tried it on, the look of pride was evident in her eyes. I remember telling her that I'd hoped to become an attorney one day so that I could afford to have a closet filled with suits that she would not have to tailor for me. Her responses stayed with me and shaped me more than she probably has ever realized. She said, "Todo se puede si uno se pone a trabajar." Everything is possible so long as you're willing to put in the work. It is thanks to her constant vigilance that all of her children graduated from college and that I was admitted to UC Berkeley upon graduating from Dos Palos High School. And while at Berkeley, I went to Berkeley both undergrad and law school. I spent my undergraduate career working anywhere between 15 to 30 hours per week to try to make ends meet. I was still able to graduate with highest honors and was subsequently admitted to Berkeley Law. I count myself as extremely fortunate to have attended UC Berkeley as both an undergraduate and law student, even though I found it incredibly isolating. Many of my peers were not the first in their families to go to law school. Most of my classmates had never experienced what it was like to grow up teetering on the edge of poverty, to have to work, really work, at age 6, to witness their mother's harassment and humiliation at the hands of their supervisors, and to avoid the unwanted hands of grown men pawing at them in the workplace while they were still in elementary school. Additionally, many of my classmates had parents, siblings, or friends that were already in the legal profession and could provide some guidance. I vividly recall a student in my legal writing class during the first semester of my 1L year telling me that she sent her brief to her father, an attorney, to review before turning it in. I'm not proud to admit this, but I could not help but feel annoyed and frankly jealous that she had a father who could guide her while my own could barely read. I'd worked so hard to get to Berkeley, and when things like this happened, it felt unfair and that I would never be on the same footing as the other students. Unlike my peers, I had no one to offer me their perspective on my written work, guide me as to what type of law to practice or where to work. After countless events where I experienced these feelings of isolation, I soon realized that by looking at everything I felt my upbringing lacked to prepare me to work as an attorney, I was selling my parents and my own experiences short. When I made that transition in my thinking, I saw, and I hope that you too will see, how much someone with my non-traditional background has to offer the legal profession. First, I knew how to work very hard without complaint. My parents were field workers. I spent my childhood working with them and my brothers to make ends meet. In the summers, we were up before dawn and worked until late in the afternoons. When there was no field work, we often helped our father cater for weddings and quinceañeras. And for me, because I was a bit more outgoing and confident, I worked after school at an insurance agency, then at a local hospital to save money for college. I knew how to advocate. My parents did not speak English throughout my childhood, so my brothers and I often found ourselves translating for them. Because I was very talkative and only girl, this task landed on me most often. I found myself accompanying my mother to doctor appointments, and if the doctor was dismissive, I found myself being insistent that he take her complaint seriously, even when she didn't want to be a bother. I knew what it was like to be underestimated. My small high school did not offer any advanced placement courses. So when I was 16, I wanted to attend night classes at the local junior college to be a competitive candidate for admission at a top university. Both counselors at my high school and the junior college told me that it would be too hard and that I would likely get discouraged, while simultaneously encouraging one of my best friends, who happened to be the daughter of wealthy, well-educated parents, to take classes so that she could have a better chance of getting admitted to Stanford. I had to bring my mother in and have her sit next to me while I demanded the counselor give me the correct forms to fill out. Thereafter, I drove myself one town over 1 or 2 evenings per week to take night classes. I knew how to make hard concepts approachable. My father had a middle school level education in Mexico, but had many learning difficulties, as his reading and writing level is that of a 3rd grader. My mother, although much more intellectually adept, received only a 2nd grade level education in Mexico. As such, whenever I accompanied them to the doctor or we made major purchases, I had to be able to explain to them what we were doing in Spanish and even translate contracts for them in Spanish. I knew the importance of honesty. When you live hand to mouth, you learn to value everything that you have earned. We were no different. My parents instilled honesty in each of their children as a core value. This extended to all aspects of our lives, including well into adulthood. As an attorney, being honest is at the very heart of our profession. You must be honest with your clients, the court, and opposing counsel at all times if you wish to have any credibility. I knew the importance of community. We may not have had a lot, but what we did have, we gladly shared with others. It may have been donating to help pay for funeral expenses, being padrinos at a wedding, or selling tamales to raise money for a field trip. No matter what, we helped one another. I knew how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. In addition to field and cannery work, my mother also cleaned houses to make ends meet when we were younger. It is hard work, especially when the homeowners follow you around from room to room. During school breaks, I would accompany my mother to clean these houses and would complain to her about how uncomfortable it was to be followed around as the homeowners assumed that we were going to steal something. She told me to learn to ignore them and keep my head focused on the job at hand. Once I started practicing law, I began to realize that these principles that my parents and my position in life had instilled in me were exactly what one needs to be successful in the legal profession. Working hard without complaint meant that I soon earned the respect of senior partners and had them asking me to work on key cases at the firm. It also meant that I caught the eye of those helping vet judicial candidates for Governor Brown and President Biden. Serving as my family's advocate trained me to do the same for my clients, to not back down when more experienced opposing counsel try to bully me, and to be dogged in my representation. Being underestimated because of my age and gender made me prepare even more diligently so that I could secure victories for my otherwise marginalized clients. Making difficult concepts approachable was at the very backbone of what made me a good lawyer. I represented low-wage workers with minimal to no formal education and had to explain complex legal issues to them about their cases in a way that they understood. My ability to do that meant that they trusted me and knew that I worked in their best interest. Knowing the importance of community translated to providing 250 to 300 hours of pro bono work annually. I knew a little guidance from an attorney could change someone's life, so I was constantly meeting with individuals to explain their rights, inform them about next steps in their cases, and when necessary, represent them at their administrative hearings. In addition to helping them with their legal issues, I also often met their children, encouraged them to stay in school, and served as an example of someone who made it. These families thanked me with flowers, hugs, freshly harvested fruits and vegetables, and homemade meals. Being able to feel comfortable in the uncomfortable was no more important than during my recent confirmation hearing. Perhaps saying I felt comfortable sitting before the Committee on the Judiciary is a bit of an overstatement, but I can affirmatively state that what got me through it was remembering where I came from and what we had overcome to be there. I remembered the many indignities my mother suffered as a low-wage immigrant worker. I remembered my brothers having to overcome their shyness and feel comfortable speaking up in class. I remembered experiencing harassment and what felt like a constant academic disadvantage. I knew that I belonged up there with the other nominees and that my voice was equally important and needed to be heard. As both an attorney and judge, I have had the opportunity to see how important mentorship is for improving our system of justice. As someone who had no connections in this profession, who had parents with elementary school level educations, and who was the first in her family to get a graduate degree, I know the hurdles that many first-generation attorneys face. I count myself extremely fortunate to have found my former law firm. From the very beginning, some of the most senior shareholders took notice of my willingness to work long hours without complaint to earn the opportunity to litigate. Working hard and being prepared meant I often spent nights and weekends diving deeply into statutes, practice guides, and treatises on whatever topics my cases covered. As a result, I earned a reputation as a capable, steadfast, and honest adversary who was reasonable and willing to come to the table to reach an equitable resolution. It proved to me once again that my mother was right. Everything is possible so long as you're willing to put in the work. Judges who took notice of my work ethic and work product encouraged me at age 38, with only 10 years of experience, to submit an application for the Fresno Superior Court. It was thanks to their guidance and mentorship that I did so and became a Superior Court judge in 2018. Always remembering the importance of that mentorship had in my life, as a state court judge, I was on committees whose goals was to increase the diversity of perspectives on the bench by creating mentorship programs to encourage attorneys from non-traditional backgrounds and practice areas to apply to become judges. In late 2020, a federal judge approached and asked me to consider applying for the district judge position in California's Eastern District. He mentored me throughout the entire process, and I am proud to say that in July of 2022, I was very privileged to have been confirmed as the first Latina judge in the Eastern District of California. Forever the believer in mentorship, during my investiture just last week on February 3rd, I was fortunate to have over 300 people in attendance to watch me take my federal oath. Because I adamantly believe that if we want to improve our system of justice, we need to mentor our lawyers, I invited attorneys and judges with all levels of life and work experiences. I also invited numerous individuals whom I have mentored as they find their way as practicing attorneys and aspiring bench officers. At my investiture, I asked those most seasoned attorneys and bench officers to make a point to meet and exchange contact information with these newer attorneys or those interested in becoming judges. Perhaps agree to take them to coffee or lunch. I wanted them to realize that the more we get to know one another, the more we will understand that although our individual struggles may vary, our commitment to justice does not. If we are willing to open ourselves up to questions, we can become impromptu mentors and show these new attorneys and aspiring bench officers that they are not alone, that this too shall pass, and perhaps most importantly, that their voice is welcomed and needed in this profession. In closing, I would like to acknowledge the huge impact that my mentors have had in my life. My mother's words, "Everything is possible if one is willing to put in the work," have been the catalyst for where I find myself now. My willingness to work hard made others interested in mentoring me because, and I quote, "I had potential." It is my hope that my story has resonated with you and that it will encourage you to stop and think about how you can help guide others in your respective professions. You never know how your words may change someone else's life. Thank you.